Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, in the name of our Lord, the most gracious, the most merciful. My name is Wilfredo Ruiz. I am the Media and Outreach Director for the Council on American Islamic Relations in the state of Florida, also known as CAIR Florida. We're going to start our press conference now. For your reference, our press conference is being streamed in our Instagram channel live. What brings us today is something very serious, because we have been witnessing for the past weeks the best of our children, those children of us that are admitted in the best universities of this land, the best minds that have been praised in the past for protesting to stop the war in Vietnam. As a matter of fact, protests that were joined back then by our today president, Joe Biden, to stop our non-just war, to stop the commission of war crimes, to stop the injustices to the people of Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia. Back then was a good thing to do. What happened now? Have our values as a nation changed? That back then our president held that at the highest moral values of our nation and joined them in that protest, and now when our students, our best minds, our future, are peacefully gathering to exercise their constitutional rights to freely assemble and freedom of speech. This is what this press conference is about. It's about the freedom of speech of all Americans. It's not about the freedom of speech of our students. It's of all Americans. Non-violent students protesting against the killing of 60% of the people dead in the war in Gaza. Think of this, 66% of the 35,000 people killed are children and women. 15,000 children is not an enough figure to revolve our gods, that any armed forces of any nation of the world who for whatever reason kills 15,000 children, and it's not my opinion or the opinion of the students, that the state of Israel is facing the International Criminal Court of Justice for things like this. So what are our peacefully gathering students claiming? That their academic institutions take a moral stand and do not give monies to kill 15,000 children, and do not give monies to kill almost 10,000 women, not to give monies to kill many other thousands of elders, killed in the worst circumstances by a famine that is a man-made provoked famine, the obstruction of foods and water and medicine to the civilian population, by definition, is a war crime. So our students are asking their academic institutions to stop funding war crimes. And they're being met by a repression that we have not seen anywhere in recent history. Because each institution alleges that they're allowing the free speech. They allow the free speech, but in one institution, you cannot give the speech, your valedictorian speech. We validate your free speech, but you cannot do the valedictorian speech. We validate your free speech, but you cannot use a loudspeaker. We validate your free speech, but you cannot stay overnight in campus. We validate your free speech, but you cannot gather and stay in a tent. We value your free speech, but you cannot carry an umbrella because that's a weapon. So that reinvention of our free speech is what this press conference is about. And we're going to stand ill, and that's the conditions we're going to expect, not only in the universities, in our society, for our government to impose on us, in our constitutionally guaranteed free speech. Are we okay with that?
No.
So this is what this press conference is about. We're going to be joined by Mohammed Mubarak. He's an attorney here in Florida, a representative of the Tampa Arab and Muslim Bar Association. Also by a student, a USF student, pre-law student, Alma Atik, she's with us today. A USF faculty member, instructor Shahed Alasay, and our CAIR Florida policy manager, Mary Marks, and she's going to be closing the statements. After the statements, we will take questions for any of those who have spoken, including me. So, Mr. Mubarak, thank you.
Good afternoon. As I was introduced, my name is Mohammed Mubarak. I'm a local attorney, former prosecutor here in Hillsborough County. Ladies and gentlemen, today I stand before you as a representative of the Tampa Arab and Muslim Bar Association, an organization deeply rooted to the protection of civil liberties and the upholding of fundamental rights. These principles are not only the cornerstone of our association, but also the bedrock upon which our great nation stands. Recently, at a local university, we witnessed a distressing scene. Students and other individuals exercising their right to protest on matters of crucial social and political importance were met with force, tear gas, and arrests. Dozens of young voices, the future leaders of our society, were silenced with unwarranted harshness. Let us remember that throughout history, student protests have often been the harbingers of essential change. They have stood at the forefront of movements for civil rights, for peace, and democracy. Time and time again, when students have raised their voices on campuses across the nation, they have been on the right side of history. As lawyers, we have taken an oath to uphold the law and protect these very rights, not only for the application of the law, but for justice itself. For justice itself, it is our duty to ensure that the rights to peacefully assemble and the right to free speech are never infringed upon. I'm going to repeat that. It is our duty as lawyers to ensure that the rights to peaceful assembly and the right to free speech are never infringed upon or overshadowed by the might of enforcement. History is indeed watching us. It will be our actions today that determine which side of history we stand on. Let us raise our voices to ensure that justice prevails, that dialogue replaces force, and that the fundamental rights of all individuals are upheld in every corner of our nation. In unity, there is strength. Let us stand together, not as members of a single community, but as part of a larger, diverse nation. We must ensure that the legacy we leave behind is one of fairness, one of courage, and one of integrity. Thank you.
Thank you. Alina. Your student, Alina. Please introduce you.
Hello, my name is Hello, my name is Alina, A-L-I-N-A. I am a lead organizer with the USF Divest Coalition, which has been demanding that the University of South Florida divest from corporations supplying weapons to the Israeli genocide against Palestinians. Over the past few months, we have escalated in our efforts, launching a hunger strike, demanding meetings with university officials and passing a student government resolution in support of divestment. Despite this, the administration has refused to even speak to us. And 2 days ago, hit a new low when they tear-gassed peaceful protesters. The day before, we had attempted to launch an encampment in solidarity with over 50 campuses nationwide, but the police pushed into the defensive circle we positioned to protect those setting up the tents. They tackled us to the ground, restrained a student protester by putting a knee to their neck, and arrested 3 people. On Tuesday, we set up blankets and tarps to continue occupying the space and chanting for divestment. We tried once again to put our tents up, this time creating 2 circles around those pitching them, locking arms and arming ourselves with wooden shields and umbrellas for protection from the police. But this time, hundreds of cops descended upon the square, decked out in riot gear, fully armed. We didn't expect the tear gas. We refused to disperse and abandon our encampment, prepared to face the cops pushing into us once again. We could hear helicopters in the air and a policewoman on a megaphone labeling our demonstration an unlawful assembly and ordering us to disperse. But we continued chanting for divestment and yelled shame to chastise Dean McDonald, who was standing there and simply watching as the volatile police force she had summoned prepared to attack. The police were positioned a good distance away. Then they unleashed the tear gas. Chemicals filled the air, and our chants turned into screams. I shut my eyes to prevent it from blinding me. I began coughing as I lost the ability to breathe, and I fell to the ground. The student next to me grabbed me and helped me up and told me that everyone was running, so I got up and started running too. I couldn't see where I was going, but I heard people screaming. I heard the cops on their bikes chasing them down. I heard rubber bullets hitting flesh. I heard helicopters swarming the air, and I ran for dear life. I'm absolutely revolted by our administration for what they did. They ignored every one of our divestment efforts, and then when we escalated to have our voices heard, they unleashed hundreds of riot police on us to incapacitate us with chemicals, tackle us to the ground, beat us up, choke us out, dogpile us, run us over on their bikes, and arrest us for simply exercising our right to peacefully protest. I'm disgusted by our deans who were content to simply watch as their students were brutalized in the name of profit, which is not unlike the way they view Palestinians. Despite our administration's violent response, we are not going to falter, and we resolve to fight until divestment. Over 50 encampments have been built around the country, and they're composed of students prepared to put everything on the line for liberation. This collective movement that we have built for Palestine is absolutely unprecedented, and we are closer to a free Palestine than ever before, so we will not stop fighting. Thank you so much.
Instructor Shahid Al-Lassani.
Good evening. I am an instructor of sociology at USF, and I am outraged and horrified at the scenes that have come out of the USF campus. As a mother, as a member of USF, I am infuriated that our students' lives were put in danger. They were put in danger by the people that are meant to protect and serve. We have been teaching our kids lessons on empathy, but the hypocrisy of our schooling system has finally come to light. Parents around the country should be outraged, and parents in Florida should be outraged. These are our children that are attending these campuses, and their lives have been put at risk. We are policing the justified outrage of protesters across the country with naked, bare-knuckle brutality. How awful is it that we are telling people how to protest gross human rights violations, how to protest a genocide, and how to protest ethnic cleansing? Finally, I'm outraged that the USF president and staff has not put forth a message in support of Muslim students or in support of Muslim staff. Soon after October 7th, a message was sent out in support of Israeli students, directly putting Palestinian students at risk. No one has checked on us to make sure that we feel safe on campus. USF needs to do better, and the Academy should do better. Thank you.
Thank you. Our policy manager, Mary Marks.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being here in attendance. We really appreciate your efforts to hear our voices and what we have to say today. My name is Mary Marks. That's M-A-R-I-M-A-R-K-S. I'm the policy manager here for CAIR Florida. I'm also a proud graduate of international relations from Kent State University and a grad student at American University. In 2 days, Kent State will honor the victims killed by the National Guard on May 4th, as they do every single year. In fact, they have a room and a museum dedicated to these student protesters. Over the last 2 months, I've been in contact with university students across the state and here at USF, advising them on their rights and attempting to build a bridge between them and the administration, to have open dialogue and discussions and facilitate conversation between the students and the administration. Every one of my requests for a meeting has been denied. I've received 2 emails in reply with form letter responses about protecting the students' rights of free speech and safety. Any conversation about divestment or a mediation has been completely ignored. We know divestment can be discussed. We know it can be passed because it's been done in the past for apartheid in South Africa. Responding to the students with "it is impossible to divest" brings into question their motivation and, frankly, their ability to teach about innovation, creativity, business, and finance law. Right now, we have another dangerous bill in our Congress that has been passed by the House and is on its way to the Senate that is again going to define anti-Semitism. This is redundant because we already have laws protecting against anti-Semitism and hate speech. Just as in Florida, the bill is designed to restrict any criticism of Israel and Palestinian human rights speech. We were able to help amend the bill in Florida, and we are asking the public to reach out to your senators across the nation to vote no on this bill. We cannot allow elected officials to not only participate in a genocide, fund it, dismantle human rights law in this country and international human rights law across the world that we helped write, and attack our students with law enforcement and restrictions of freedom of speech. Our elected officials are ignoring activists, they're ignoring established law, they're ignoring their constituents. They are focused on pressure from pro-Zionist, pro-Israel stakeholders demanding unwavering support. We've heard this from Netanyahu himself over and over in regards to our domestic law, how we treat our students on our campuses. Netanyahu does not get to decide what happens with free speech on our campuses. He's restricted them extensively in Israel, but he does not rule U.S. domestic policy. This is not the United States of Israel. This is the United States of America. Ask yourself, why does Israel, a foreign government, have complete control of our government and academic institutions? Why are our tax dollars going to a foreign government when we need so much help for our people here? My father is a veteran, and he cannot even get into veteran assisted living housing because there are no beds for him. Why are our universities invested in a foreign government instead of American companies? I was under the impression that we wanted to help American industry and American business and American people. Why are our cities buying bonds from a country committing human rights atrocities? This is illegal. Why is a foreign state being given government contracts for cybersecurity and advanced surveillance? I've heard speech after speech against allowing China to do this, but why are we allowing Israel to do it? And why has our government sent armed police and snipers to our campuses, arresting and abusing unarmed American students and professors? I worked for the US Senate on January 6th when an insurrection happened. My boss hid for his life on the floor of the Senate, and we didn't know for hours if he was alive or not. I thought that was going to be the worst day of my career. But here we are with the majority of Congress and executive office complicit in human rights crime, and university administrations turning guns on a generation of kids that they have taught active shooter drills to in their schools. I'm going to repeat that. We have active shooter drills for our children at the youngest of ages. And now our schools are sending armed police, state troopers, and proposing National Guard to turn guns on our children. This generation's takeaway is that their government cares more about money and power than universal human rights. This generation is learning the oath of office their elected officials took means nothing. That the universities tasked with teaching them will betray them for money. I'm going to leave you with the words of Eleanor Roosevelt, who helped write the Declaration of Human Rights. Where, after all, do universal human rights begin? In small places, close to home, so close and so small that they cannot be seen on any maps of the world. Yet, they are the world of the individual person, the neighborhood he lives in, the school or college he attends, such as the places where every man, woman, and child seeks equal justice, equal opportunity, equal dignity, without discrimination. Unless these rights have meaning there, they have little meaning anywhere. Without concerned citizen action to uphold them close to home, we shall look in vain for progress in the larger world. During this press conference, a baby lies on the floor of a hospital with half of its face blown off in Gaza, with no pain medication, and families are digging through mass graves to find any piece of their murdered family member. 20,000 kids will go to sleep in a few hours with no mother or father to tuck them in ever again. Thank you. We will take your questions now.
I was wondering if there are other instructors who are upset seeing what's going on the USF campus, and if there is some kind of like coalition of instructors that are forming, or kind of forming a group.
All the speakers, please come nearby so we can field all the questions, please.
That's a great question. Unfortunately, no one has said anything. The department that I am a part of, which we've been talking about social justice for so long now, and I'm sure you've all seen the meme circulating of what would you have done during the Holocaust while you're doing it now. We've been talking about this forever, right? And there's been absolutely, it's radio silence, and it's extremely infuriating, especially as somebody who has been, so the students and the professors that are on campus that are on international visas are afraid to speak out, rightfully so. And they're afraid to put their jobs at risk, they're afraid to put their visas at risk, they're afraid of getting deported. And everybody else, it's just been radio silence. And like I said, nobody's checked on us, nobody's checked on the staff to make sure we are feeling safe going into class teaching, and nobody has sent out any emails in solidarity, so, no.
Alina, can I ask you, what was the discussion among students? Because we were down there at the time, and there was a 5 o'clock warning. So what did you guys all discuss when school administrators said 5 o'clock you have to be out of here? Did you strategize, and did you anticipate that reaction?
We did not anticipate tear gas. The day before, the police pushed in to our defensive circle around the encampment, and we were expecting that once again, so that's why we had like wooden shields to protect ourselves. I was in the inner circle. I was right behind a bigger man because I was sort of scared that they would like break my bones if I tried like being on the outer circle. We didn't expect them to unleash chemicals, and then when they did make that announcement that chemical ammunition would be used, we didn't want to abandon our encampment, so we did not leave until it was actually released.
Going off of that question, when the university shared its, policy about setting up tents, et cetera, were you guys aware of that? Was there a discussion for maybe a different form of demonstration the second day?
A different form of demonstration is in something other than an encampment?
Yes.
So we have
It's something, basically without tents.
we have tried many different ways.
How they can protest, exactly what's allowed under Florida statute, and how that compares to the policy that the university was putting out. And there were ample discrepancies about what the Florida law says they're allowed to do and where, and what the university was allowing. A lot of the students had agreed to come and protest peacefully during the day and then leave at night and come back and do it again the next day, so that we could try and get conversations with the administration in the meantime, so that it did not become an escalated situation.
I mean, that's what we're hearing though from the school when we talk about the other side of this, is that they put out the warning, the policy is no tents, not to be in certain areas. So how do you address that argument, that it was put out there, no tents in these areas?
This focus on tents and encampments, it's really a conversation that is clouding the real issue. It's a distraction from what the students are even there to begin with to address. They are trying to stop U.S. involvement in a genocide. They're trying to fight for Palestinian human rights. So every single time the media and university administrations are complaining about these encampments and these tents and how they're breaking the rules, well, we have government officials who are breaking the law, and they are having no repercussions. So my question is, why are we cracking down on a student's protest when they are asking that their elected officials follow the law? This is not about tents. This is about saving lives. And if the university wants to end these encampments, it's very simple. All they have to do is have a conversation about divestment. Instead, they've gone to war on their students. Have a conversation about divestment. And all of this would go away. Every last bit of it would go away. But they refuse to do it.
The only bilateral communications that universities are holding is with law enforcement. The rest is unilateral communications with the students. I'm sending communications of what you cannot do. I'm sending communications where you cannot convene. I'm sending communications how loud you can be because you cannot use a loudspeaker. I'm sending communications if you can use an umbrella or not. Unilateral communications where we communicate formally, and attorneys have communicated formally with universities to engage in dialogue with students as the universities teach in their classrooms. They're denied by the same university. This is the hypocrisy we're seeing in the university and in the academia system. We're taking a day off and our students saying, go and meditate on Martin Luther King and his honors and how he honored our history. We're not going to teach that day. Go home and meditate. It is a day for you to think of that. So this exposes the hypocrisy, the open hypocrisy of our academia only engaging in dialogue with the interested parties representing either the governor or the legislators or other organizations dedicated to support unconditionally the state of Israel no matter what they do.
Can you go into more detail about what they're saying about divestment when you're having these conversations? Can you talk about more of their reasoning that they're trying to say why they can't divest?
Why the universities are saying they can't divest? The one communication that the students at USF received was that they can't.
No
that
explanation.
well, their only explanation was a Florida statute that was passed last summer in 2023 that states that you can't use preference when investing or purchasing stocks and bonds and things like that. I have spoken to attorneys, and we are looking into the legality of that argument from the administration. In my opinion, that is, you can't be prejudicial in your purchases. That does not mean that you can't divest. It says nothing about divestment. So the university is saying they can't, or they've also said that they don't know where their money is. The investment firm takes care of it. That's also just excuses. They absolutely have the power to find out where their investments are going. They can definitely find out how to divest. We are a country of excellent minds in financial matters. They can figure out how to do it. It's been done.
One last question from me. I'm not sure who this is best directed at. There's been, some talk about, with graduation ceremony starting today through Saturday, there's been some talk about, potentially, holding protests or demonstrations at or around the graduation ceremonies. I know the university is anticipating the potential for that as well. What's your message to people who may participate in a potential protest or demonstration? Do you support it, or what's your message to them?
Could I respond to your question? I'm so sorry. Could I go back to, okay. So you were saying, what argument are they providing? Firstly, they refuse to meet with us directly. We have attempted multiple times to meet with administration directly. They will give us the dean of students, and we're saying, no, we want to speak with the board of trustees. We want to speak with the university president, those that actually have the power. And they refuse to speak to us. I even reached out to the university lawyer, and we basically get no response. So, they have only been giving statements to the press. We even found out about the bills that they were citing, the specific statutes that were mentioned through an article, and we researched those bills. So when we passed the divestment resolution, we passed it through Student Senate a little while ago, and we passed it through. The bill says no ideological reasons. So you cannot base preference for your investments, for purchases, on ideological reasons. We passed it through financial reasons. We said we want divestment based on financial reasons. And then we also provided legal reasons. They're providing funds to weapons corporations in the midst of a genocide. It's definitely some sort of violation of international human rights law. So we do have, there are ways for the university administration to heed our request. This statute isn't the end-all, be-all. There are a lot of, if they wanted to, they would. If they actually wanted to listen to their students, if they actually wanted to have that discussion with us, negotiate with us, if they actually wanted to not have it escalate this far, then they would have at least had that discussion.
Thank you.
And then what about the graduation? I'm sorry, what about the graduation? I mean, what are your thoughts, and what are other students, you have seniors graduating. I was down there the other day, and there were some graduates taking photos while there were, law enforcement in the background. Is there, any thoughts on this going on during graduation?
Where did you hear that there were going to be protests or demonstrations at graduation?
There's been a statement put out by USF in anticipation of that. They're going to have, heightened law enforcement at the ceremonies.
Well, I haven't really heard anything about it, so I don't.
So you guys weren't planning anything?
I haven't heard anything about it, so I can't answer that question.
I see that there's some Spanish media here, so we're fielding questions in Spanish. So.
Who's going to speak in Spanish?
Okay.
Primero, agradecidos por darnos la oportunidad de entrevistarlos en español, y comencemos primero con sus reacciones por estas últimas 48 horas en USF.
Pues mira, no puedo limitarme a solamente hablar de las últimas 48 horas en USF, porque lo que estamos viendo es que a nivel nacional hay un ataque sistémico a nuestro derecho a la primera enmienda a manifestación con los estudiantes en las mejores universidades, decenas y decenas de universidades donde están las mejores mentes de nuestra comunidad, están los estudiantes manifestándose reclamando precisamente algo que no es foráneo a lo que están solicitando la mayoría de los norteamericanos. 2/3 partes de los norteamericanos quieren que se detenga el envío de dinero para el uso en la guerra en Gaza. Estos estudiantes son la voz de la ciudadanía. Y eso es lo que nosotros hemos querido transmitir, que esta conferencia de prensa es mucho más allá que si se permiten o no unas tiendas de campaña, que si se permiten a los estudiantes trasnochar o no, va mucho más allá. Hay que retirarse un poco y ver a vuelo de águila qué es lo que está pasando sistemáticamente en decenas de universidades donde se ha empleado la fuerza más brutal para estudiantes desarmados, solamente reclamando algo que no les gusta oír, obviamente, a la administración, que es que se detenga el gasto de dinero público, sea de las universidades o sea de quien sea, para el uso de la guerra, especialmente cuando se ha evidenciado y ha quedado a los ojos del público la Comisión de Crímenes de Guerra por el Estado de Israel.
¿Usted cree que si estas protestas hubiesen sido dadas por estudiantes pro-Israel, el resultado hubiese sido el mismo?
De hecho, sea de paso, estamos mirando muchos casos donde hay agentes provocadores, agent provocateurs, acercándonos a los campamentos de los estudiantes que están protestando contra las políticas de Israel y no sabemos de dónde vienen esos agentes provocadores. No podemos descartar de que vengan hasta del mismo gobierno de Israel, porque el gobierno de Israel tiene millones de dólares invertidos aquí en los Estados Unidos para evitar precisamente que haya manifestaciones contra las políticas que están haciendo. Y ustedes ven que no es una política secreta que Netanyahu vaya detrás de unos micrófonos a dictarle a los norteamericanos cómo ejercer su derecho a la libre expresión y cómo tratar a sus estudiantes. La mayoría de los norteamericanos piensan que no aceptan ese tipo de directrices y no quieren que sus dineros vayan a la Comisión de Crímenes de Guerra.
¿Usted cree que en efecto se están violando derechos constitucionales en todo el país en estas manifestaciones?
Definitivamente, porque los límites que se le están poniendo a los estudiantes no son límites razonables, son límites impuestos para precisamente silenciar su mensaje. Y por eso vemos lo sistemático de este ataque en todos los estudiantes de universidades del norte, del sur, del este, del oeste, públicas o privadas. Va mucho más allá de ello, porque en todas se está usando la fuerza del orden público en vez de para defender que los estudiantes ejerzan su derecho a la libre expresión, para suprimirlo. Donde deberían estar la policía es protegiendo a los estudiantes que protestan, no sacándolos de ahí. Esa es la labor de la policía, proteger a los ciudadanos en su ejercicio, en su libre ejercicio de sus derechos constitucionales. Y el derecho básico a la libre expresión es donde primero debería estar la policía defendiendo.
Y no estamos en Nueva York, estamos en Florida, y la protesta en Florida aquí en Tampa ha sido muy distinta a la de Nueva York, pero vimos en Columbia University. ¿Cuál es su opinión o su reacción con Columbia University?
El elemento común en todas las protestas es que la violencia, quien la trae al terreno, es la policía. Estudiantes en paz, estudiantes acampando, los primeros actos de violencia, universidad tras universidad, son cometidos por la policía aquí, la policía comenzó allá, la policía repartió palos aquí, la policía tiró gases lacrimógenos acá, la policía pateó aquí. Siempre el elemento de violencia está introducido universidad tras universidad, y yo invito a la prensa a corroborar precisamente esto. Quien inicia la violencia en todos estos sitios es la fuerza del orden público, sobre pretexto de que tienen que sacar estudiantes porque presentan una amenaza, porque tienen sombrillas y porque tienen unos paneles de madera alrededor de esos campamentos.
La última pregunta, sé que me he extendido de last one. ¿Qué le diría usted a los estudiantes? Porque va a seguir habiendo protestas, los estudiantes pro-palestinos que van a estar allí en la calle manifestando.
Los estudiantes tienen que saber y tienen que estar seguros de que el Consejo de Relaciones Islámico-Americanas, así como cientos de abogados en toda la Florida, están no solo con su voz apoyándolo, con su voz y con su trabajo apoyándonos al 110%. Nosotros queremos que los estudiantes continúen y no se les limite en lo más mínimo su derecho a la libre expresión, mucho más cuando lo que están reclamando es algo tan justo como detener los crímenes de guerra de Israel para con los palestinos.
There's a lot of discussions about, not just at USF, but across the country about, this conference is about students, but about outside agitators being invited in. So we've seen some arrests of non-students. Has that played a role here? Have you all invited people in? I mean, talk to us about people that aren't part of USF's immediate community coming in, and is that intentional?
Although we stand for everybody's right to exercise their First Amendment rights, the purpose of this is limited to those students that has been persecuted for the past weeks, and we didn't want to dilute it with other actors that precisely steal the messaging, because today, like Mary says, everybody's talking about tents, encampments, umbrellas, instead of talking if it is okay for a university to stop giving money to buy bombs to kill children. You see, nobody wants to talk about that. It's about the encampments and the students, not the message of the students. If the media is good enough to suppress the names of infamous people, the media is good enough to bring the message of the good people that are our students. Unarmed citizens, the best minds of our citizenship around the nation, with one voice saying, stop investing in killing children. That's the message. The rest is precisely where the people in favor of this massacre, where people in favor of the occupation, where people in favor of the continuous colonization of the Palestinian lands want you to pay attention to. In everything else but the message to divest monies from Israeli war crimes in Gaza. That is the message. And do not let any foreign country, Russia, China, or Israel dictate our freedom of speech here in America. No country in the world will dictate to us our freedom of expression limits here in America. It could be China, it could be Russia, the former Soviet Union, whomever, and Israel the same. We don't take any guidance from countries committing war crimes either.
It was mentioned over the past couple of days that there were some hospitalizations following the protests. Are there any more details on that, on how many were hospitalized?
At this time, we are working with parents and their families to do intake on actions that happened to them, wounds that they may have sustained, but we can't speak specifically to it right now.
Any legal action plans?
We do have a team of lawyers that are helping, but I can't get into specifics for which students and what they will be dealing with. I do have a response for our gentleman with the Spanish media, and then I'll repeat it in English, actually. So, nuestro gobierno no tiene un problema para decir a otros países que ellos tienen que hacer con derechos humanos. Ellos tienen que proteger su población y dar derechos de academia para hablar contra violencia. Decimos eso a otros países, mientras están haciendo la misma cosa a nuestra gente. So I was repeating a question that he's had, and I said that our government has no problem telling countries from Central America that they have to protect human rights in their countries. We have no problem telling other countries that they have to protect against violence, academic freedoms, freedom of speech to their people, and condemn them for not doing it. Meanwhile, we are doing it to our own people.
I have a question for you. That you were there in the middle of everything on Tuesday. So far from multiple of the law enforcement agencies up there, we've heard that they didn't use rubber bullets. But I know I was there. I saw the rubber bullets on the ground, or I saw at least one on the ground. Did you see any? I heard that you mentioned that you heard some. Could you kind of touch on that?
I did hear rubber bullets. I ran away very quickly, so I didn't get to see a lot of the chaos, but I know there were bullets there.
We've heard a lot of talk about rule versus law. You know, it's a rule in USF. This is what Florida law says. What does it look like moving forward with towing that line between breaking rule, breaking law? And this may be, you know, a better question for you guys from the legal side of things. You know, what does that look like in deciding how we move forward?
So sorry, can you repeat your question? What's the role of the law?
Or no, the difference between rule and law. You know, there are rules at USF, and then there's law surrounding protests.
Right.
When planning those next steps, what does it look like to not only look at breaking a rule versus breaking a law, but even the legal implications that could come from an arrest because a rule was broken versus a law was broken?
So that's a great question, and obviously, so for example, there's a student handbook, right? And the student handbook says you can't do X, Y, Z. None of those laws were broken. So, but in anticipation, it's interesting to see USF's response and what she had asked earlier about the graduations. And this is the first that we're hearing about it. So USF has been trying to get ahead of this, right? That's what they're trying to do. That's why they sent that statement out. They sent a statement out about no tents on X, Y, Z. So they're arbitrarily applying the law. And that's the issue here. They're arbitrarily saying at 5 p.m. you can't be here anymore. Why? Where is that in the student handbook? Where is that rule? Where is that law? They weren't disrupting anything. They weren't doing anything. But USF's response, rather than engaging in dialogue and talking to their students who pay to be there, rather than talking to them, they're saying, we're going to bring out the police, maybe even the National Guard, and we're going to use violence against you. When has violence solved any problem? When has it solved the problem? Instead, we're going to choose to use violence against our own students, our own citizens. It's nonsensical.
And it sounds like, from y'all's perspective, these rules are coming out of thin air almost, you know, with the 5 o'clock close time for MLK Plaza, things like that. Have you gone back and checked and double checked and looked at where they're coming from?
Yes, and as she mentioned, there's already lawyers looking at, the handbook, the rules, and constitutional law, obviously what are reasonable limitations, because obviously we recognize that free speech is not unlimited. There are reasonable limitations to free speech, but did USF apply them reasonably here? That's the question that needs to be answered.
In regards to divestment, it's pretty understood that in the mid-'80s, there was a push against divestment from USF into apartheid, companies that were supporting apartheid. So with the success of that divestment initiative, and it's my understanding that several companies were divested from by USF, and they actually formed an advisory committee to formulate policy which would continue to deter them from investing in companies that are involved with human rights abuses. Has that situation been brought to administration for this current problem or this current initiative? Being that it's the same thing?
Yeah, people have mentioned it to administration. Administration has been there for most of the speeches that we've done at rallies and such. So they know definitely. They've been monitoring our social media accounts. We had an entire post that was just talking about how they did divest from South Africa in the 80s, and then the Oracle reached out to us for an interview on it, and we did deliver that interview, and then USF insists that it's different now because of the statutes that were passed last year. But I think that it's more different because the U.S. So closely protects Israel. The interests in the Middle East are protected by the existence of Israel. So it's really just their own interests. I don't believe that it has to do as much with the statute, because the statute, again, there are so many ways if they actually wanted to divest, they would do it. So.
Thank you.
And this history isn't too long ago. This may be a question for you. Is faculty very mom on everything? Have you heard from faculty members who were either working there, student there in the 80s? You know, is there any type of dialogue going on, especially when we do have these parallels between the divestment then, you know, I heard earlier mentioned the parallels with Vietnam and student campuses?
Like I said, in the sociology department, this is all we've talked about as we're teaching our students about historical things that have happened. But as it stands now, nothing has been said about the genocide that's currently taking place. And it's extremely infuriating as an instructor to be told, you know, we're also being told what to teach and what not to teach, right? We're in Florida, politics and everything. The situation is very difficult, so as they say. And so the instructors have not said anything, the department has not said anything, and it's just been completely silent.
How important is it to have instructors, and not to say that students aren't adults, but there's that difference there, to have that backing, and this could be for both of you guys, you know, that difference in experience, age, perception from people in the general public. Do you find it important even?
I definitely find it important. We tried getting faculty support. There's this book, The Chronology of the University of South Florida by Andy Hughes, which is how we got most of the information about the divestment efforts for South Africa, and they had a lot of faculty support for that. So that's definitely one big factor in pressuring USF administration, because now it's not just the students that are like pressuring you to do it, it's also the faculty. And also again with public perception, like people do conceive of students as like kids, even though we are like, you know, adults. They don't really respect us. They're just like, you know, we just want to like cause a riot or something. With faculty stepping up and like saying something, that would mean so much. So we did try to get like faculty support. We drafted an open letter, and we made the open letter. First, it was a bit politicized. It was about like the genocide and stuff like that. But then we tried reaching out to some professors, and they refused to sign it because they were afraid of losing their jobs. So we depoliticized it. We removed all the things from this letter. We made it completely about like the well-being, the safety and the well-being of their students. So it's just like, oh, we are faculty, and we don't want our students to be escalating in this way. We don't want them to be going on hunger strikes. We care about their interests. We want the administration to listen to them. And faculty still refused to sign it because, and I don't completely blame them for this, because the pressure is definitely on. Faculty will lose their jobs if they speak out. Like, you know, in the state that we live in, it is incredibly difficult for faculty to say anything. And with South Africa, it was very, very different. Again, it wasn't Israel. Israel is very different in terms of its relation to the US. So we have tried getting faculty support, as we deem it very important for our movement, but unfortunately have not really been successful in that.
From my conversations with you guys on Tuesday, it seemed like really the whole goal was to just be there and protect the tents. Like, it seemed like the whole goal was to remain peaceful the entire time. I know that some people have expressed concerns that one of the people that were arrested there did have a concealed weapon. Do you know if that person was apart with you guys, or any? No, I'm not.
We do not have specifics on the individual that had a concealed weapon, but it's my understanding that the state of Florida is fully in support of concealed carry laws and allowances. So if they are now saying that they are no longer in support of concealed carry and freedoms to do that, then I would be more than happy to help address them and revise that particular law.
The fear that the professors profess is real. In CAIR, we have received in the past months dozens of calls of the most educated professionals, meaning doctors, professors, engineers, teachers, lawyers, who have lost their job for standing for the people of Gaza in their job place, or for criticizing the state of Israel. So, when I said at the beginning of this press conference that this press conference is about the freedom of speech, now you see the tentacles, how freedom of speech is being affected in America after this war. It's not just about the students, it's about the teachers not wanting to speak out. Why? Not because they're shy, because they're going to be fired. Dozens of doctors in Florida, I'm just talking about Florida, dozens of doctors. You know how hard it is to hire a doctor? And here they fire them by the dozens for criticizing the state of Israel or for standing for the people of Palestine. This is the state of freedom of speech in Florida. This is why this is about freedom of speech. Can our students, can our citizens criticize a foreign government under policies or not? That's the question we should put forward to all Floridians. Can Floridians criticize the state of Israel freely without consequences? Ask that to the Floridians in a front page and let them answer. That's the status of our freedom of speech in Florida. Imagine, I don't read articles about the hundreds of journalists that have been murdered in Gaza. Not 10, 20, 50, hundreds of journalists like you guys murdered and bombed in Gaza, even if they have the press sign like this big in their chest. 8 workers. It's not just the 6 of Grand Central Kitchen. Israel have murdered hundreds of 8 workers. We no longer respect Red Cross, Red Crescent, Doctors Without Borders, doctors being killed. That has been normalized in America. What we used to criticize from the regimes of the Soviet Union and Russia and China and North Korea, we don't want to criticize, but that who engages is Israel. Why? What is the problem with that? Could you lose your job? That's the question, America. Would you lose your job for criticizing the state of Israel? If that's the only reason you have to stop criticizing the state of Israel, you should worry not only about you, about what happened to your children and young children, what their rights going to be. If you have allowed that in these times, we cannot do that kind of criticism. If some of my kids are expelled from school, I lose my job. Or worse, like our kids have been threatened in schools. We are using artificial intelligence to identify your faces so you cannot get a job when you graduate. These people standing in these encampments are representing the best of America. That one that do not get intimidated, but you will not get a job ever because you're protesting on the wall. This is what we're facing here in Florida. It is very worrisome, yes. It is very worrisome. At all levels, for media, for academia, for law enforcement, for our students, for the civil rights of every citizen. It's very worrisome what's going on in Florida. The repercussions, it's not just a matter of an opinion. The repercussions are real.
¿Podría repetirlo en español justamente ese statement sobre el miedo de los profesores, estudiantes?
Pues mira, en Florida lo que está pasando es una pérdida de los derechos civiles, especialmente el derecho a libre expresión. Aquí estamos viendo que no solo se limita el derecho de los estudiantes a manifestarse, sino los profesores no se atreven a unirse porque pierden sus trabajos. En nuestras oficinas en CAIR hemos recibido docenas de llamadas de la gente que es más difícil contratar, que son doctores, ingenieros, que han perdido sus empleos por criticar el Estado de Israel y sus políticas y los crímenes de guerra, o por pararse a favor de los derechos de los palestinos. Docenas de doctores, abogados que han perdido sus trabajos en los bufetes de abogados, maestros. Aquí en Florida tuvimos hasta el caso de estudiantes expulsados por algo que dijo el papá. No por algo que dijeron ellos, por algo que dijo tu mamá. Tú estás expulsado. Ese estado crítico de los derechos civiles en Florida es serio, porque envuelve también a la clase de reporteros, que no ha dicho nada cuando matan cientos de reporteros en Gaza, o cuando matan a los ayudantes de las agencias de ayuda, las agencias humanitarias como los Doctores Sin Fronteras, muertos, nos matan cientos por ciento, no es por un error de 10, 20, 30, cientos de ayudantes de este tipo, bombardeados, doctores bombardeados. Esa falta de respeto al derecho internacional, que dicho sea de paso, es la que otros países, por la que otros países han llevado a Israel a la Corte Internacional de Justicia, es lo que los estudiantes están reclamando y denunciando. siendo la voz de la mayoría de los norteamericanos, porque después de todo, las encuestas todas indican que 2/3 partes de los norteamericanos aquí en los Estados Unidos no quieren que sus dineros vayan a la guerra y apoyar la guerra en Gaza. Así que los estudiantes están siendo la voz de la mayoría de los norteamericanos. Y esa es la voz que estamos suprimiendo y nos estamos entreteniendo que si quieren acampar, porque quieren acampar. Y el mensaje nos está llevando. No es sobre acampar o no acampar. Es su derecho a la libre expresión y como un gobierno foráneo puede venir aquí a los Estados Unidos a dictarle quiénes y cuándo pueden hablar. Y eso no se va a permitir.
I just had a clarification question for you real quick. Were you, when I had asked about the concealed weapon question, were you saying that like if Florida's stance on, you know, being able to carry a permitless, or were you saying that like it is legal to carry on a college campus?
As far as I know, it's legal to carry anywhere, and not on a college campus.
The charge
Okay.
was for, possession of
Okay.
school property.
Like I said before, I don't have the details on that specific case or what happened or how they even came to know that he had one. I do know that this last legislative session, a bill was proposed and passed that would allow individuals to carry a large amount of ammunition and guns to go and protest or to protect themselves for a counter protest. The bill was in regards to protests and riots during Black Lives Matter, is what they were trying to address and say. So my point was, if they are going to pass a law that says that you can go and arm yourself to work against protesters, then why are they having a problem with a concealed carry law that they widely support and try and make sure that individuals in Florida can carry their guns anywhere? So that was my point. I don't have details on that specific case, or I would share them with you, but I don't know the exact specifics. Thank you.
Any other questions? ¿Alguna otra pregunta?
Thank you.
Gracias. Gracias por estar con nosotros.